Hello, everyone. I'm Craig Emmerich. I'm Maria's sidekick. Other half. A little bit about myself. Maria and I, Maria's been doing this for a long time. She's over 15 years, been keto herself, with her journey through healing, but also helping clients. It took me a little longer, like a lot of us husbands. She led by example, and I just saw how great she felt and how she healed and all the energy she had. And it was kind of one of those, during the week she would make these great meals and I'd feel great. And then on the weekends I'd go off to, the rails a bit still. It took me a couple of years to come around to the fact that, make the connection that stuff I was eating was not making me feel good. And so then, I've been 10, 12 years now, been keto, and even I used to home brew my own beer. So now I don't drink any beer anymore. So it's been a bit of a journey to get there, but we have now kind of gone together as a team to look at helping people. I was in the background as kind of tech support, or I have an electrical engineering degree, so I was keeping our website up and all these components of our business behind the scenes. In her earlier books, I would do all the calculating of the macros for the recipes and then making the meal plans. So it's kind of behind the scenes, and in the process, as an electrical engineer, you have to constantly study to keep up on the latest information in science. And I kind of brought that with me, and I just started diving in and reading all the science and information I could about this lifestyle and about our biology and how our bodies work. And that led us to our book Keto that we launched earlier this year. And thanks. And I wrote the first 4 or 5 chapters, and then 1 or 2 later, and then Maria wrote the rest. So it was a total combined effort that we put that book together. And I think it's really important aspects in there are discussed, and one being macronutrients. And that's what Maria covered yesterday. It's just the whole macronutrients are basically fuel. So you have alcohol, ketones, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, and how your body processes those different components and oxidative priority. We'll touch on that here a little bit. But then there's a whole other aspect of what's in our food, and that's micronutrients. And I think this is something that in this community is not quite given a bright enough light, especially when you start talking about bulletproof coffee and those kind of things. This is the thing that we really need to focus more on in this community, to not just to lose weight, but to heal our bodies and to improve our health. And that's the key, and that's what we're going to discuss here. So micronutrients. Micronutrients are those vitamins and minerals that come with our food. And it's best to get it from food, as we're always taught. But they're so essential for a lot of functions in the body, whether it's enzymatic processes, cellular health and building and healing. And so you need lots of these micronutrients, these vitamins and minerals, not only just to live, but especially if you're trying to reverse disease process. Your body, it's got a lot of repairing to do, so it needs a ton of micronutrients to do that repair. And so focusing on, cellular healing, building healthy hormones, you need micronutrients for that. You need brain. The brain is not only an energy hog, but it's a hog for a lot of different micronutrients. Everything, heart health, fighting oxidative stress and inflammation, anti-inflammatory qualities and different minerals or vitamins. So it's especially, like I said, important for healing and reversing disease. And this is where we also bring into what we do with clients, what Maria has done for quite a while. She's a real expert at identifying areas of deficiency in people with different disease processes, and then not only having very nutrient-dense foods to help heal and help that support that healing process, but boosting it up a little bit more with some supplements and natural components that can actually give you a little extra boost to help that healing process. And I think that can be a great part of healing if you do have chronic disease, is boosting it a little bit more even with some supplements. But one thing to point out is not all micronutrients are equal. There's a lot of little nuance to it that, more is not necessarily better, for instance. The less carbohydrates that you eat, the less vitamin C your body requires. So that's one where, you talk a lot about vitamin C. In a standard American diet, you might need a lot of vitamin C because you have a lot of carbs and a lot of inflammation, and you need the vitamin C. The less carbohydrates you eat, studies have shown, the less vitamin C is required. So if you're eating no carbohydrates, there isn't a big need for vitamin C. Another very important thing is bioavailability. So some of the vitamins and minerals that are in plant sources aren't as bioavailable as they are maybe in animal protein, for example. So that you have to consider as well. But given all that, in general, the most important thing is to get the most nutrient-dense food you are able to get. So, if you get two choices of food, one has a lot more micronutrients in it than the other, macronutrients being equal, I'm going to pick the one with more micronutrients in it. So let's talk about that a little bit. And this is, in our book, I dedicated a whole chapter to this because when I started looking into it and researching, and it just kind of struck me, even my own perception of food is skewed, really. And I think in the general public it is as well. So let's say I gave you a plate, and there's a steak, some blueberries, and some kale. The superfoods, right? Which one of these would you say has the most widest range and highest level of micronutrients, vitamins and minerals? You read my book. So, especially like kale and some of these things, you're thinking, okay, that's like a superfood, right? Well, you start looking into it, and this data, anybody can go out on like Chronometer or one of the databases, and you can look at vitamins and minerals and put them in here. This is based on serving of 100 grams. So for 100 grams of apple, blueberries, kale, beef, and beef liver. What does it look like? Well, what I did was I shaded the darkest one, the top one in that row, so like folate. Top one, beef liver, 127 micrograms. The second highest, I shaded the next highest level. So you see like number one and number two, right? There's a lot of shading over here, right? There's only a couple where kale beats out. And one of them, again, vitamin C, which the less carbs you eat, the less you need. So you start looking at these charts, and it kind of changes your perspective on food, right? It used to be that, my mom would push me to eat my vegetables so you get your nutrients, right? Well, the steak is giving you more probably than most of those vegetables you're going to eat. And then you want to talk about what's a real superfood? Beef liver and organ meats. That's something that we've also lost in our history and culture, is that nose to tail eating and eating those organ meats that, are just loaded with nutrients. And especially if, again, you're trying to reverse disease process, getting those very dense animal proteins and organ meats are very important. So here's just kind of a look at animal proteins. So beef liver, beef, salmon, eggs. You can see it spreads out a little more because you get certain areas that are higher than others in animal proteins. But this, if you have a well-formulated ketogenic diet where you're eating a range of these things, you're going to get boosted in all these areas in these micronutrients. And if you line this all up, if you had a combination of all these against a lot of the vegetables, it's gonna knock them out of the park. So you really just, this animal protein I think what happened was, my belief on it in the popular culture, is that you had these kind of flawed studies that came out, like the China study, which, you can go to whole dissertations on how flawed that was. But then also, these other ones, it seems like there's a bent towards anti-meat, especially red meat. Red meat causes cancer. Every time a study comes out, no matter how flawed it is, it's all over the news. So what happens is, if you're not going to eat meat, where are you going to get your nutrients? You got to get it from fruits and vegetables, right? So there's always this kind of skewed, where do you get your nutrients? Oh, fruits and vegetables. Don't talk about that meat. And so I think we need to get back to what's really nourishing our bodies and what really causes disease, and it's not animal protein. This also points out a really important point, what I alluded to in the beginning. Marie and I have always been big proponents of just eating real whole foods. Chew your food. Just eat animal proteins, throw some low-starch veggies with that, and stick to those things that are, just the way we used to eat. And one of the big components of that is micronutrient content. So now this is that same chart, vitamins and minerals, beef liver and beef against lard or beef tallow. So these are basically your fats or your MCT oils or those type of things. There's not much in there. So yeah, you're getting a lot of energy in that bulletproof coffee, but you're not getting any micronutrients. So you're not feeding your cells. And there's a lot of, I have a slide a little bit later that shows how protein, the nutrient density of food can really influence satiety. It's kind of like going back to, it's not saying they're the same, but it's going back to kind of the standard American diet. What's processed food? Processed food is stripped of nutrients and empty calories. And that's why you can overeat those processed foods, because they're high in carbohydrates and they don't have those micronutrients your body wants. So your body's saying, I'm still not fed because I haven't got the nutrients I need. So that's a big satiety signal. Same thing can happen here. It can have a similar effect. Fat is definitely more satiating than carbohydrates. That's obvious. But all things being equal, again, I'm going to go for the animal protein before I'm going to go for this, for feeding my cells. So let's talk about superfoods. So again, I added this. This isn't in the book. I just added it for these slides. Everybody, one of the knocks I got is, well, I don't want to eat beef liver. Well, it wasn't just about the beef liver. It was about the beef by itself even. And so here I even added things like broccoli, acai berries, right? Superfood. Yeah, it's got like one thing in it. Sweet potatoes, Sweet potatoes have some higher, it beats out in a few spots, but again, just a steak. Look at all the number ones. So, and of course, again, beef liver would destroy all of these. And here's a tip on beef liver. So some people like it, some people don't. Our kids don't. It's an acquired taste for sure. But there's some great tips you can do to incorporate it. One thing that we always do is if we make a batch of chili, something spicy, so it's got that chili powder in it and that spice, if it calls for 2 pounds of hamburger, take a half a pound of ground liver, mix it all together, cook it up like normal. You don't even know it's in there. And you just pumped up the micronutrients in that food. So back to this, those who haven't seen my book. So where are you getting your nutrients here? It's not the kale, it's not the blueberries. You're getting most of it from the steak. So some other benefits of animal proteins. Maria touched on this a little. Thermic effect of food. This is kind of all these fuel sources, when they come into your body, they require a certain amount of energy to be consumed or used or utilized. Alcohol is about 15% thermic effect. So if you get 100 calories of alcohol, you end up with 85 in the body after it's been processed. Ketones and fat are similar, only 3%. Again, bulletproof coffee, you're not getting as much benefit. because almost all those calories go right into your system. Protein, on the other hand, 25%. So if you eat 100 calories of steak, that is effectively 75 in your body. And again, this is from Maria's slide, 500 calories of bulletproof coffee. You do the math, it's 485 calories in the body. And plus the blood sugar impact of caffeine. This is something that Maria mentioned as well, but we see a lot of very metabolically damaged people, people with type 1 diabetes, people with all kinds of conditions, and caffeine will impact them. They will impact their blood sugar. We see people all the time that get stalled and they eliminate the caffeine and they start seeing things moving again. So something to point out. And then 500 calories of sirloin steak, it's about 11 ounces. You're going to end up with 401 calories in the body. So that's 18% less calories. Now, it's not only about calories. We're not saying this is calories in, calories out. Trust us, we have lived this. We understand hormones are a huge part of the equation, but you can't ignore the calories. And this is a simple change where you can get, effectively, that's several pounds of weight loss a year, just doing that change. I say 3,500 calories is a pound. So 9 pounds in a year. So always chew your food. There's something as well about just the satiety signaling of chewing your food. Back to the example again, 500 calories of bulletproof coffee. We've seen people that have 2 or 3 of those in a day, and they can just down them. Think about sitting down to a plate of 7 scrambled eggs and trying to finish that. It's a different, that chewing process it's so easy to consume liquid calories. So stick with chewing. Protein sparing, modified fast. So you leverage this. So you leverage the idea that protein can have this thermic effect of food and have this beneficial component. Protein is needed. You have to have a certain amount of protein to maintain your lean mass. So especially as we age, it's kind of interesting. There's kind of a curve with life. Young kids need more protein per pound of lean mass than adults. 2-year-old might need 3 times their lean mass in protein. Somebody who's a kid who's 7, it's probably about 2 times their lean mass protein a day, because they're fueling this massive growth. You need all that amino acid to help build growth. And then as they move into no longer growing or adulthood, it's about 0.8 times their lean mass, which is what we call moderate, and that's all our recommendations are based around that 0.8 times your lean mass. Something that's interesting for ramping up weight loss and for really, we have a new ebook that we put out, and we've been getting some amazing feedback on just people implementing protein-sparing modified fast into their life because they were stalled for 8 months, and suddenly the weight's moving again. And so this is a powerful tool to help break stalls, to improve your results. And here's the chart about satiety. This is how many grams per kilogram of lean mass of protein you eat versus how much target calories are consumed. And this is a huge data set that this is pulled from, but the higher the protein, the less calories are consumed. So protein sparing modified fast day. This is one of the people I was just mentioning to you. But what's so interesting and powerful about this is, if you think about what's the ideal diet for weight loss, the ideal diet for weight loss is going to be something that gives your body the nutrient-dense food to feed your cells. It gives it protein to maintain lean mass. And it keeps you satiated on the least amount of calories, right? That's what you want, right? And this is a perfect example. Somebody with our ebook she bought, and she started implementing it, and she had to force herself to get to the protein goal. She just wasn't hungry. Our meal plans in this protein sparing days, they're like 600 calories, 700 calories. and she was struggling to eat the food in it. I mean, that's kind of revolutionary when you think about it, right? I mean, to be able, one of the hallmarks of Counting Points, I don't know if I can say their name, we actually got a cease and desist letter a while back. You're hungry all the time. And it's because you're eating a lot of carbs yet, but you're not getting a lot of fuel, and you're not supplying your hormones, the hormone aspect, right? So again, fuels. How do you do this right? You get rid of the alcohol. Don't take exogenous ketones. Eat protein to 0.8 times your lean mass. And one thing about protein doesn't want to be used as fuel. It can. You can turn protein into glucose through gluconeogenesis, but it's not an easy process. It takes about 5 ATPs, 5 energy units, to turn protein into glucose. And then it takes another 2 to use glucose as fuel. So 7 ATP to take protein and utilize it as fuel. It can do carbs or fat with like 2 ATP. So if you've got a lot of fat stored in your body, why on earth would it go through 7 ATP for something it can do for 2? The body's not dumb. It's going to know what to use as fuel. These are amino acids, and it needs those for building lean mass, repairing. And this isn't just about bodybuilding, right? This is everybody's body, especially if you have disease issues, they got to repair. So they got to break down old cells, autophagy, failing cells, and they got to have substrates to rebuild new ones, right? So amino acids are important to maintain your lean mass and heal. Carbohydrates, get rid of them. There's somebody just had on their phone. I was taking a picture for them. It was a chart of, I think it was, doctor in New Zealand. No, not Noakes, but in New Zealand. Yeah. Posted this on his Twitter, I think it was. It was a pie chart. Most of it was a chunk that said non-essential carbohydrates, and there's a little sliver that with a line said also non-essential. Biologically, the only need for carbohydrates is to feed the gut flora. That's the only biological requirement for it. You can make all the glucose your body needs to run just internally through gluconeogenesis or from glycerol. Maria described this. When you're burning fat as your primary fuel, fat is stored in adipose tissue as a triglyceride molecule. A triglyceride is 3 free fatty acids linked together by glycerol. And the first thing it does when it wants to use some fuel, it pulls that out of your adipose, cleaves or strips off the glucose or glycerol, and then you got 3 free fatty acids in your blood and a glycerol. This is a common misconception that when you're keto, you burn ketone as your primary fuel. You're actually burning free fatty acids more than you're burning ketones. Free fatty acids can be burned directly in your muscle and other tissues, and so that's what's used to fuel your body when you're keto adapted. Some of that free fatty acid can go to the liver and be turned into ketones, but that's only for parts of the brain and other areas that need to run on ketones or glucose. They can't run on fat. But what's really interesting about that is that glycerol that's cleaved off, that goes to the liver, and 3 glycerol molecules make a glucose molecule. So in your stored fat cells, you basically have 90% fat and 10% glucose stored. So it's like a perfect little system to feed your body what it needs. And then, of course, fat, this is where something like protein-sparing modified fast can really leverage this, because when you're keto adapted, your body can use body fat or dietary fat equally. It doesn't care. Both of them look the same to it. And so if you want to lose some of that stored body fat, ramp down the dietary fat a little bit, and protein-sparing modified fast days, take that to another level and ramp it down a lot. So optimal health and healing. We touched on this a little bit, but leverage that oxidative priority to lose weight. Look at those fuels, and just if you want to get down here to burning fat, then get those fuels optimized on the other end so you get around to burning fat for fuel. And then also, you always want to eat those most nutrient-dense foods, and a lot of times that's animal proteins. So focus your plate on the animal protein, and then add the low-starch veggies around that. Ideal diet, we discussed this a little earlier, but if you can have a situation like protein sparing my fast days where you're eating 700 calories and you can barely get all the food down, and you're getting a lot of nutrient-dense foods, that's pretty optimal for weight loss. And of course, one nuance in here is you of course want to keep out things like omega-6, vegetable seed oils, cause oxidation in the body and inflammation. So this is that ebook I mentioned. You can get that on our website. And we also have, of course, Maria's books and some services. We have some new courses that we made that are really great. But I think at this point I will open it up for some Q&A time. Questions? We'll get the microphone over here.
First off, love the book, Keto.
Thank you.
I'm not all the way through it, but I'm through it enough to just know I love and adore it. So thank you so much. Yeah, it is. Okay. Okay, I have a few questions, so I don't know if I should hit you with all of them. But
sure.
First off, caffeine and blood sugar, do you know how much that is impacting it? Has it been measured to show what the bump is?
Everybody's different. Their metabolic state.
Yeah.
Somebody who's really sensitive, like a type 1 diabetic, they'll have to actually bolus for it, so they'll have to compensate with insulin ahead of time.
Yeah.
And it really varies. But and again, all of this, we've learned over the years with lots of clients that certain things help, and this is one of them. If we look at it as if you really like your caffeine, go ahead, have it, do everything else just right. If you hit a stall, maybe take a look at getting rid of that.
Yeah, I'm kicking it to the curb this week, so based on talking to Maria. Okay, another one with the micronutrient of organs like liver. How much per week would you suggest to maintain that good balance?
I think one good serving of liver a week is a good idea.
Okay.
You bump up those nutrients, and like I said, hiding it in some chili is a great way to get your serving in. But
that's a great idea. Okay, last one. Anymore. Protein sparing modified fast, and because I know it's lower calories, I understand the satiety and everything. Maria was saying like a couple days a week. Could you do it longer, or do you start worrying about metabolic damage from it? And also just how it responds by calorie lowering with protein versus something else. So if you could address that.
Sure. So a couple things on that. What we typically do is, if you want to try adding protein-sparing modified fast days, do maybe 2, maybe 3 in a week. Okay. And then the other days, just do your normal keto weight loss macros. See how that works. If that starts getting things going, great. Mm-hmm. If you need to push it further, we haven't really pushed it past maybe 5 days a week. So maybe the weekdays, Monday through Friday, doing them, and then Saturday, Sunday, do a more normal keto weight loss macro. Mm-hmm. One of the issues with it is, it's not, I don't think it's anything to do with like starvation mode or anything like that. But I think what happens is, you're not getting the nutrients just because you are eating nutrient-dense food, but you're only eating 600 calories of it. If you eat 2,000 calories of it, you're going to have a lot more nutrients. Right. So you want to make, and fat as well, you do need fat for healthy hormones and those kind of processes. So it's just good to switch it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks so much. That was great. I just wanted to make a comment about your vitamin C. And I found that very interesting because when I started keto 4 years ago with very, very little dietary support, everyone kept saying, you need to supplement, you need to supplement. So being a good girl, I did. I also eat a lot of beef liver, loaded in vitamin C. Yeah. And I was eating my green leafies, which makes vitamin C sediment uric acid. So my urate levels went through the roof. They hit 500. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, right ho, okay, back off on all the vitamin C. I now have a quarter of a red pepper a week and my liver, and that is more than enough for my therapeutic ketogenic diet. Exactly. But I just wanted to let everyone know that if you didn't already know that, green leafy vegetables sediment vitamin C. So if you're eating your veggies and you're getting a little bit of liver or a little bit of red pepper every now and then, you are getting adequate vitamin C for sure.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it again is that misconception of you have to supplement with keto because it's not getting you nutrients. Look at the animal proteins. That's where the nutrients are. It's that misconception, you know?
I've showed people that chart on my phone, I think 15, 20 times I read the book. I'm like, look, see.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
It was a great screenshot to show everybody.
Quick question on food preparation and as its effects on nutrients, the micronutrients, or even the ability of your gut biome to be able to digest. So, for example, eggs, as far as to have like a poached egg versus a scrambled egg, to have the egg yolk a little bit less cooked, more maybe nutrient dense, as long as the egg whites are cooked. What are the thoughts of food preparation when it comes to meats and eggs?
Well, I think that's probably a little bit more about the fat in it than anything. You overheat any fat and it's going to become oxidized, right? And so you want to be careful with, that well-done steak or that, high level of char. If you get any fat too hot for it past its smoke point, it's going to become oxidized, cause inflammation, all of that. We tend to lean towards the rare. We had sushi last night, so it's about as rare as you can get. And eggs, we do soft scrambles, lower heats, that kind of stuff. But I don't think that's as much about micronutrients as it is about the fat.
And I've been through a couple different PSMF, I would call them stints, and I would take into consideration Lyle McDonald's work. Do you differ at all versus his work in terms of, obviously how long? You already talked about the 5 days a week being that max. And two, do you believe in something in terms of like a minimal fat requirements per day or something like that for hormone regulation?
Two things. I know Lyle. Two things on. So Lyle's is a kind of a even more extreme protein sparing modified fast profile, and it's a little different in that he might only be 20 grams of fat a day, and 9 of that has to come from a krill or omega-3 supplement, which I find kind of odd for two reasons. Because why not just get it from the food? Number one, and number two, we actually don't recommend any omega-3 supplements. I've done research into it, and the problem is omega-3s are very heat sensitive, very easily oxidized. And so were those pills, refrigerated in the truck as they came to the store and kept in refrigeration in the store? And, how long do they sit on the shelf? And it's like, that is, to me, is just, I get all my omega-3s from the freshest seafood and, real food sources. So I think that's probably the main differences there. As far as duration, I just don't think there's enough evidence out there to say that I can do protein sparing every day for a year. It might be fine, but we tend to just stay on the safe side and say, cycle in and out of it a little bit. But yeah, most people, they can see really good benefits if they add it 2, 3, 4 days a week. So, thanks. Any other questions?
Could you just briefly talk about bioavailability between meat and, say, veggies of the nutrients involved?
Yeah.
Like, what are the mechanisms? What makes the nutrients less available, say, in vegetables?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to that, and there's different sources, different variations of nutrients in different sources, right? So, just like in supplement, you can get magnesium glycinate, magnesium malate, magnesium, there's all these different forms, and they're all different absorption rates. So, the form is part of it, but also, we discussed this in the book, all plants have anti-nutrients. All plants. So, anti-nutrients. So, that is something that is detrimental to you. Plants, if you think about a plant, they want you to eat the fruit because they want to spread the seed. They don't want you to eat the stalk or the leaves because then they die. So they put in natural defenses. There's all of these compounds that are in there, and if you cook them well, you can negate some of those effects, but it's something that needs to be considered as well. And so you actually get a negative effect from some of those things, those anti-nutrients. Any question? Up here?
I don't know that I necessarily need the microphone, but it's for the recording.
Yes, for the recording, they need to get it on there.
I'm going to have some multi-level questions like the other people in the front row. Okay, a couple of questions. I haven't read your book yet, but I was just enthralled by the cookbook and a lot of the things, and inspired by a lot of things like, eliminating dairy, for example, for 2 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah.
Amazing effects. And so I was wondering if you've done any, as far as reversing or healing, have you seen after extended periods in a therapeutic ketogenic environment, testosterone and cortisol, drops in testosterone levels, especially for people over 50, for men over 50, women over 50, and cortisol in kind of, does it make sense to be cyclical and go into another form of maybe a paleo, or what would you recommend from that standpoint, or are there ways to combat it with micronutrients?
Yes. So I think combination of micronutrients as well as getting adequate amounts of dietary cholesterol. Cholesterol makes all your hormones are made from cholesterol. It's one of the precursors. And when you eat this way and eating a lot of eggs and, you're getting a lot of cholesterol to help boost and feed the production of those healthy hormones. So I think we definitely see a lot of improvements with clients of testosterone levels and, energy and just all these different components that go into feeding healthy hormones. And that's one of the great things about ketogenic diets is they boost your hormone production when you come from this world of, no cholesterol, no fat. It boosts your hormones. A lot of women actually see a change in their cycle,
Right.
where they go to basically a more natural cycle for their body because they got proper hormone production happening.
Well, cortisol, at least I consider it to be a negative hormone.
Correct. And our experience is our clients, we've never really seen any issues with cortisol.
Okay.
Staying keto for long term.
I just need to quit stressing out.
What's that?
So I spend a lot of time in the hunting and fishing outdoors industry, and so I work a lot with clients that suffer from Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And it's horrible, and I mean just the symptoms, the effect, especially because so often it goes unaddressed, and it's allowed to live in the body in a high carbohydrate environment, having a party for a long time. And your notion of the syntax of oxidation is fascinating, but I was wondering if there's maybe a syntax for reversing disease for something like Lyme that you might approach from both the two-part question, going after, let's say, the microbiome and that kind of things first, or getting right into the ketogenic diet. And then the other thing is as far as like post-exercise, therapeutic, nutritional, or even the use of exogenous ketones as a supplement, is there a syntax of what might be most effective in reversing a disease that is so demonstrative like Lyme?
Yeah. So how much time do we have?
I've got to be home for
5
Thanksgiving.
minutes?
Oh.
Okay. So I have chronic Lyme disease.
I just picked up the cookbook and I was drawn in by the big pretty pictures. I didn't think I was going to have to read anything.
So multiple things there. Number one, we have helped a lot of clients with Lyme disease just with keto. See a lot of relief.
Right.
That's like number one. There's even some of the people behind the carnivore movement started because of chronic Lyme. Mm-hmm. They going from keto to carnivore saw another level of improvement for them.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying that is killing the Lyme. That's just lowering your inflammation, lowering your pain, all of those kind of things.
Sure.
To kill the Lyme, that is a art, science. Right now, I'm blessed. Our publisher, he has connections. He's actually writing 2 different books on Lyme with top doctors in the world on Lyme disease.
What's the name?
Victory Belt Publishing. I'm not sure when they're coming out, but he's working on them now. And so I have that. He's a good friend of ours. I am on the phone with him practically weekly discussing protocols. And so I'm blessed to have the best Lyme doctors in the world. I'm getting their protocols, their latest information and protocols for fighting Lyme. And it's a multifaceted approach because Lyme severely depresses your immune system. And when your immune system is depressed, all this stuff can happen. You can have parasites, you can have increased heavy metals, all of these things, mold issues, mycotoxins, all these things that can come in to your body. And so to reverse Lyme, you've also got to treat all this other stuff as well.
Right.
And I started out right away with something called the Cowden protocol, which is a bunch of tinctures. You can
Is
get
a bunch
it
of what?
On COWDEN. It's tinctures and parsley and all these compounds that are for detoxing and for cyst busting and all these kind of components. Started that 6 months ago now. And then I moved into treating the parasites. So they're very powerful, very expensive parasitic drugs, antiparasitics.
Right.
Went through a month of that. And then I went right into antibiotic treatment. So I'm on 3 different antibiotics that...
Oh, you have Lyme?
Yes.
Oh, that's probably why you asked. So I guess you do have an opinion on the on the syntax of treatment.
But on that side, I would say that I've been suffering with the pain for 4 to 5 years now. Mm-hmm. But the entire time I was keto. And I think that did 2 things. I think first of all, I've been able to keep functioning beyond what most people at this stage for me, especially in treatment.
Right.
The treatment I'm going through right now, most people are bedridden or close to it, or at least part of the day.
Sure. And
I'm still able to function. I mean, my afternoons are hard. Pain builds up in the afternoons. But number 2, a lot of people get where it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and you get a lot of focus and bad memory and all this stuff. I never got that.
Oh, cool.
I wrote this book last year. I've never had any issues with that. I think being keto has somehow helped that.
For sure.
In my opinion. But again, the treatment, it's aggressive what I'm doing right now, but I'm trying to knock it out. I'm not looking to get, 80% relief. I'm trying to get rid of it. Right. And there's the top Lyme docs in the country think you can, at least to a maintenance level where you periodically do certain things, like monolaurin is a really good natural antimicrobial that I'll probably be taking for some time after treatment, just as maintenance level kind of thing. But there's a lot of, I just found out I got a real high mercury level. So I got to get my silver amalgam fillings removed and start dealing with detoxing that. So it's very multifaceted and
So one of the things that that was in the syntax that was kind of woven into the syntax question, even after Maria just beat into me that I should not be taking so much MCT and exogenous ketones, could there be a benefit therapeutically in reversing that by bringing the system up using conceivably even an ester to help with the autoimmunity, for example? Or is that something that's just a bad place to go, in your opinion? I know it's not science.
Just from my own experience, I've never added MCT, I've never had bulletproof coffee, and I think it's managed it quite well up to this point. It managed the Lyme. Mm-hmm. So I think just being keto does so much. If you want to take another step, I'd say go to Carnivore for a while.
I ended up going down that pathway and finding little carnivore groups and that swear by did they just eat all meat? It's
to the point where I've talked to some of them, and I haven't quite gone there yet because my pain hasn't been debilitating. Mm-hmm. I've been able to manage it. But it's no eggs, no dairy, it's protein. Right. So And they will tell me, oh, when I removed eggs, it was another big step.
Yeah.
So, there's something there to that. So if I would do anything, that's the direction I would go.
Yeah, I fought the dairy for 5 years. I thought it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
One day I was eating dairy, and the next day I wasn't,
Yeah.
and it was nothing.
Yeah.
And
Just got to find alternatives. And
yeah, exactly. So, well, I hope you find
Thanks.
a way to get feeling better. And I didn't bring up a sensitive issue.
Oh. Thank you, everyone.